Hello everyone and welcome back to the Ryan Retro channel. Over the course of this next week, we're going to be running through all the best games from each of the last 9 decades. Yes, almost 90 years of gaming. And we're going to be trying to run as many of them as we can on the Retroid Pocket 5. So let's begin back at the very beginning, the first ever video game. This is the Cathode Ray Tube Amusement Device. Very catchy name. This was made in 1947 and modelled after World War II radar displays. All you could do in this game was shoot lights across the screen, and there was no computer involved with this whatsoever. So there was no way of knowing if you hit a target or not. So what you had to do was take some stickers, put them on top of the board, and you had to just determine by yourself if it was a hit or not. So this is technically not a computer game, as it didn't involve any kind of computers, it was just purely analog, but this is known as the first ever video game. As this game is so old and purely analog, there aren't really any emulators we can use to play this, but there is a website that I'll link in the description where you can play a recreation of this yourself. So this is just running in Google Chrome, so we can push this silver button to begin the simulation. It's a bit difficult to fit on the screen, but you'll see the button will toggle on or off this moving animation. So when we toggle it on, it will start moving. And if you want to adjust the trajectory, the blast time, the spot size, etc., we have controls over here. They are a little bit difficult to control on mobile. So just for this test today, I have also connected a mouse, just because this is a game from almost 90 years ago. So it is a little bit tricky to run on a device like this, but I just wanted to show you that if you connect a mouse, which is obviously not the optimal way to play, it does work. And you are also able to grab these stickers and move them around just like you would in the real game. So if we stop this for now, and let's pretend we're playing a real game. So you're going to position them around the field like battleships. Let's say I want the plane over here. But in this case, you're actually trying to hit them. So let's say I placed my 3 stickers here. And now if we once again push the button to start the game, I'm almost hitting that red plane down there. So maybe I just want to adjust this trajectory a little bit. And this is quite finicky to use, even on a PC. But this is emulating a game from, as I said, almost 90 years ago. So I think it's quite special. This is technically the first ever video game. So if you would like to emulate this, I wouldn't say it's extremely fun, but it's just interesting to try. Check out the link in the description of the video. So let's move on 1 year now to 1948, and we're going to look at a game created by Alan Turing. Yes, the man who invented the Turing machine, what many people consider to be the first ever kind of computer. He also made one of the first ever video games. That game is called Turo Chess. It's a kind of chess game, but it was so advanced for its time that it couldn't actually run on any of the computers we had available. It was finally able to be played by Turing himself in 1952. And now, many decades later, it's been recreated so we can play it too. So once again, the link to this will be in the description, and it will bring you to this GitHub website, TuroChamp, and it will even ask if you want to install it. It's quite funny because it's like a regular game of chess you might play on chess.com or something like that. But it has some talking from Alan Turing happening at the top, and he actually says it out loud. So if you turn the speakers up, you'll hear him speak after every move, and it's quite helpful because he tells you where he moved the pieces to, but it's also quite funny because he says some quite bizarre things. Once again, you'll see it's hard to fit on the screen of the Retroid Pocket 5, so just for this one, because I want to also show you what he says, I'm going to actually rotate the device for this. So obviously this is not the ideal way to use a Retroid Pocket 5, but you can play this on any kind of computer or game device that you have, as it just runs in the web browser. So Alan Turing says, how about a nice game of chess? I've not really played chess since I was a kid. I only played that one time in my previous Xbox video you might have seen, where I thought I was going to win and then immediately got checkmated. So let's see how it goes today against Alan Turing. So I'm going to just move a pawn up here, and he says that looks draw-ish, which I'm not sure exactly what that means. Let's keep moving. Curiously, we don't seem to have any sound. I've turned up all the volume, but I can't hear any sound. When I played this on the computer, there was commentary, so it's a shame that it's not working here. Seems we're stalemated like 2 grandmasters, or like my Manchester Mark I when I forgot to plug it in. He likes joking, Alan Turing. Let's just speed run this. I'll just checkmate him, don't worry. I'll play that over there. Switch the king and the castle, a little bit of a pro move there. I'll then come in and fork his 2 pieces. I'm going to take whatever I like because I am a chess master. Wait, did he take my queen? Where's my queen? Where did my queen go? Excuse me? My only goal in this matchup was to take his queen and not lose my own, and mine seems to have disappeared. He says, I've seen faster moves in a game of cricket. I'm just getting burned by Alan Turing. So if you guys like chess and you want to play chess, and simultaneously be insulted by Alan Turing, this is the game for you. Oh, I'm trying to move my pieces, but I think I've been checkmated. Okay, well that's enough of that game. Let's now move on to the 1950s, and 1952 brought OXO, an early version of noughts and crosses or tic-tac-toe depending on where you're from. OXO was made by a PhD student studying at Cambridge, and it ran on a computer the size of a room. But players couldn't see that computer, so they had to look at a really small display to play tic-tac-toe. This game might have been the first ever game you could say was an online multiplayer game, because you could play it across the university network. So in order to play this game, I'm going to jump into ESDE, and we're going to jump into the Commodore 64 version of the game, which was a 1980s remake. You can also, once again, play this online in the web browser using the links in the description. So look for those if you want to play it on any device you might be using right now. So we have two versions, OXO and 3D OXO. And interestingly, 3D OXO actually came out before OXO. So let's first jump into 3D OXO, which is the earlier version. Here we are with our Commodore 64 system. Do you need instructions? And this is a game that I think is going to be keyboard only, because if you look at the original Commodore 64, it was all keyboard based. It's going to be very hard to play this on a system like the Retroid Pocket 5 again. So what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to connect a keyboard just to show that we can also get this working as well. And we can turn this now into our own little Commodore 64. So I'm going to bring up my Bluetooth options and I'm going to pair this keyboard. There we go, we now have a working keyboard, and now we have our own little Commodore 64 set up. Interestingly, while I was trying to set up the keyboard in RetroArch, I realized if I push the select button here, or the back button, it actually brings up a little Commodore keyboard. So I'm going to attempt to play this without the keyboard. Of course, you can connect a keyboard, like I said, if you want to set up your own little Commodore 64 system, but let's try and use just the Retroid Pocket 5 itself, because I think that's quite interesting. Do I need instructions? We're going to just say N, and then push the start button, and that worked perfectly. So now we have 4 board choices. Do you want to go first? I will say Y. Your move, board. Okay, so I guess we pick what board we want. I think this game might be where they got the idea for deal or no deal. I'll pick board number 4 because I like the number 4. Row. Oh, maybe I'm making my move now. So I'm going to pick a row and a column. Okay, so board number 4, let's say we're going to go for row 3. And now it's asking me the column, if you can see that behind the text there. It's asking me the column number, and I'll also say 3 again. And let's go. And there's my place. Good game, eh? Oh, I didn't know it was a Canadian game. Interestingly, the down D-pad button is a left arrow, the left D-pad button is a space, the right D-pad button is a 2, and the up D-pad button does nothing. These are some very interesting keybinds. Oh, the right trigger is a redo from start. So this is going quite, let's say, interestingly. I think if you want to play this, you're going to want to spend some time setting up your key commands inside RetroArch, or connect the keyboard and try it that way. Because this game was made with the keyboard in mind, so the game is clearly playable. You're probably just going to want to spend a little bit of time setting up some key commands. So now let's try to move on to our other OXO game. From 3D OXO, which I don't think was 3D in any way, shape or form, to regular OXO. And this one straight away looks 3D. I think the names are switched. How many players? 1. Where will you put your circle? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm going to put it right in the middle, 5. I am thinking. Okay, this is an interesting game straight away. Where will you put your circle? So they put an X in number 1. I will now go to number 3. Sometimes I play this game with my 5-year-old students and I absolutely wreck them. Okay, they put theirs in number 7, so we're going to have to go to number 4 to stop them. I'm not sure why this game is so tiny up there. I wish it filled out the screen a little bit better, but I'll zoom in for you so you guys can see this. And I'll try to not move my hands very much. Where will you put your circle? Okay, I'm pretty sure no one's going to win this. And in fact, nobody can win this. Let's just say 8, it doesn't matter. I am thinking, where will you put your circle? 9? What if I throw them a curveball and try and put it on top of their one in number 2? Then I get 3 in a row. Already full. Okay, that didn't work. Let's go with 9. Nobody won. Again? Yes or no?
You have selected no.
So that game wasn't the most fun, but it's definitely playable if you'd like to play some old nostalgic games. So now let's move on to another game, once again in 1952, Drafts. In America, it's known as checkers, and this game, despite being 70 years old, could already beat most human players. So even 72 years ago, AI was already smarter than a lot of people. The program ran on a special computer, and I love the name. It was called the Pilot Ace. That's a great computer name. I'm going to have to start naming my computers. As far as I'm aware, this game is not available to try, so instead we're just going to play another old checkers game. So coming back to ESDE, we're now going to jump over to the Atari 2600, and we're going to play video checkers. And I have a bit of a confession that I chose this game before I started filming this video because I thought this would be a nice one to play. It's nice and old, retro style. It really suits the aesthetic of these old games. But I don't know how to play this. None of my controls seem to work very well. You're meant to select the checker you want to pick up, then pick it up, and then choose where you want to put it, and it should be quite easy and self-explanatory. But I find the controls barely do anything.
2 hours later.
After a lot of painstaking trial and error, I figured out the controls. If you think of the original Atari 2600 controller, it was a joystick. It wasn't a D-pad. I've been treating this like a D-pad game and trying to just move left, right, up and down. But the Atari 2600 wasn't like that. So what we in fact have to do is actually move diagonally. So rather than trying to move down and then right, we have to move in that diagonal direction. And we can do that using the D-pad or the analog stick, and it's quite finicky, but it does work. So we need to diagonally move and choose our pieces. It still takes quite a few goes for me to do it, but I'm getting used to it. So let's move over here and choose this piece. Now let's move it diagonally up and right, and there we go. Every time I make a move, it seems to keep switching between various games. This is quite confusing. So I would recommend if you did want to play a checkers game, maybe check out a different one. I chose this one because of the aesthetic, and I think it looks really cool and retro, but it seems quite annoying to play. So I would recommend checking out another one if you want to play checkers, or drafts as we call it in the UK. Moving on now to 1958, and we have Tennis for Two. This was a game created by William Higginbotham. The lab was having its annual open house party where people could come and check out the lab, and William Higginbotham created this game just so the visitors could have some fun. There was a tennis court displayed on an oscilloscope, which was usually used for science experiments, and this game once again can be played online as it has been recreated by a couple of different people. So I'll put 2 links in the description this time where you can try 2 different versions of this game. The first link, which takes you to itch.io, actually does also show it has an Android and iOS app. Unfortunately, it's not compatible with the Retroid Pocket 5 because it's made for an older version of Android. So if you're using maybe the Retroid Pocket Mini, which is stuck on like Android 2, maybe you can install it, but unfortunately not on the Retroid Pocket 5 because we're running Android 13. So opening the first link in the description, you can choose Run Game. It's going to open it in full screen like this, like a real Android game. It's been remade in Unity, so this is like a serious game. And we are now playing the 1958 game Tennis for Two. So to play the game, you simply just need to tap on the screen and just think about the angle you're tapping at. We want to hit it over the net, so we should be hitting it at the bottom of the screen like this, underneath for an upward trajectory. So let's try and tap the screen here. There we go, let's keep tapping. It's kind of like a more advanced version of Pong. It's honestly quite fun, more than you'd think it would be. So there's no real scoreboard here, this is just for fun. But out of the games we played so far, this is probably the most fun. It's been very well recreated here, so check out that first link in the description to play this Unity-created recreation of Tennis for Two. And now let's look at one more link in the description, which I also put there. Following the second link in the description will take you back to that same website where we checked out the cathode ray tube amusement device. So once again, we're going to need to rotate the screen this way to see everything on the screen. And while this one doesn't run full screen like the last one did, it does model the original hardware, which looks quite cool. So I think the other one will be more fun to play, but this one's very nice to look at. So you can turn these knobs to adjust the angle, although I'm not sure how to get it working very well on mobile. So once again, I'm going to turn to my mouse. And I'm going to use the mouse to adjust the angle I want to hit the ball at. You can choose whether you want to play against a second player or a CPU. And once you hit the switch, it's going to start hitting the ball. So we will choose a CPU and we will then hit the button. And what you can do is you can keep adjusting your trajectory as it's coming back. And this is more how it would be played on the original device. So as it's coming in, I might need to adjust my trajectory for a higher hit over the net or a lower one. Ooh, and I was too slow. So you can imagine playing this with 2 hands back in the day, one hand smacking the button and the other one adjusting the trajectory. I think this was probably a very fun game when it came out, considering this is from 1958. So feel free to check out these 2 links in the description for 2 distinctly different versions of Tennis for Two. Rounding out the 1950s were some games such as Mouse in the Maze, which let players draw a maze using a light pen, and then control a mouse to try and find some cheese. Interestingly, you could also find martinis. That was your 2 choices, cheese or martinis. So that might technically be the first ever game with alternate endings. There was also a game called The Management Game, which set off a whole craze of management games in the late 50s. Moving on to the 60s now, we have Marienbad. Marienbad is inspired by this film Last Year at Marienbad and a really old math game called Nim. Nim is a game you might not have heard of, but you might have played before. It's a game where you have to take away objects, which is known as nimming, and the last one to pick up an object loses. It's commonly played with matchsticks, and I've played this myself as a kid, where you can choose to take away just one matchstick, or you can take away as many as you want in one row. So you could take the whole row, you could take out 3 or 4, it's up to you. But the objective is to make the other person take the last one. So once again, I have a link in the description where we can play a recreation of this game. And this one's really interesting because it's not just recreating the game, it's actually emulating an old Macintosh computer. So when you load this up, you're going to see the file manager, the cursor, the trash, everything. If you use a mouse, you're able to actually move the cursor on here, and I'm now controlling an old Macintosh computer. So what we're going to do is load up the Marienbad game by double-clicking it, and once again, double-clicking the file. Let me zoom in so you can see this clearly. Here is the Marienbad game. Let's double-click that to open it. I'm going to rotate the screen just to make it easier to see here. You can of course just play it this way, it's fine. But just to show you in this video, I'm going to rotate the screen so we get a bit more real estate here. So here we are, Marienbad, inside a Macintosh emulator, inside Chrome on my Android device. So what we need to do is remove the matches, and we want the opponent to take the last one. So if I choose the top row, I'm able to take from 1 to 6, any amount in the top row. With a mouse, you can drag and choose multiple matches. I think with touch input, it's not going to work particularly well, because remember, we are emulating a really old Macintosh computer here. This is long before they brought out iPhones and iPads, so the touch input support is not great. So I'm going to choose 3 matches, and after selecting them, I'm then able to drag them away. I hope you can see that little ghost animation. So we drag them away and they disappear. The opponent takes out 4, so I now realize I have lost this game because you can only take 1 from a row at a time. But just to continue to show you how it works, we can only choose 1 from 1 row, so I'm only able to take 1 right now. So you just tap on the one you want to take and then drag it away. The opponent will take 1 and then I lose. Game over, I win. Games were much harsher back then. We can then go to File, New Game. It's definitely a strategy game you need to think about, but I'm just recording this quickly to show you, so I'm just going to choose anything I want like a maniac. But don't worry, I'm not going to be making a compatibility spreadsheet for this. This is just purely for fun. You can even bring up the Macintosh control panel and play around with that. That's like a whole other game in itself. Moving on to 1962 now, we have a very famous game of the 60s known as Space War. This was the first ever game designed to be played on a computer that had a display screen, known as the PDP-1. It became a cult favorite in universities, and you could say this might be the first ever competitive game. The first game that people used to argue about their prowess over. Once again, if you check the description, there will be another link where you can play this online. There's a nice recreation of this game, but I will admit I've been trying to play this a little bit over the last day or so, and I don't really understand how it works. You have 2 sets of controls for 2 players, and it does tell you the keyboard controls as well. So if you have a keyboard attached to your device, you can use that. And interestingly, it says USB gamepads are enabled. So by default, this does come with gamepad support, which is fantastic. So I'm going to jump into the game and make it quite large on the screen and see if the gamepad support is indeed working on the Retroid Pocket 5. If I zoom into this screen, you're going to see it actually is working pretty well. Of all the games I featured today, this is the one that's making me the most curious. I'm going to have to put some more research into what this game is about, or if you know more about this game, please let me know in the comments, because it seems like you're just getting sucked into a black hole and that's the whole game. So I'm really curious about what the actual purpose is. I guess it's to destroy the other spaceship, but I would really like to know more. So please let me know if you know more about this. And if you'd like to try this game, it is a good one to try because it has native gamepad support, which is awesome. 1964 brought the Sumerian game. This is a game that curiously has just been remade and added to Steam. So I've been trying to get this working on the Retroid Pocket 5 through Winlater, but unfortunately it's not been possible yet. 1969 brought Ken Thompson's Space Travel. This was a side project he made while he was developing Unix. The physics in this game were so accurate that it actually became more of an educational game than an entertaining one. It's also sometimes called the first ever indie game because Thompson made this for himself. It wasn't for a big project or for a company, he just made this in his downtime, which was very unusual at the time considering the amount of resources needed to make a game like this. Once again, you must be sick of hearing me say it now, but check out the link in the description if you'd like to play this game as well. This is going to be my first time looking at this one. For all the other games in the video so far, I have had a little look at them and seen how they run, but for this one, I've not looked at anything yet. I have no idea what I'm about to see. And all I see so far is a black screen, and all you can see is my camera. I'm going to bring up the brightness of the Retroid Pocket 5 to 100%, as it's mostly just black with a few white borders. I'll also try and angle it away from my camera, And as you can see, not much is really happening. If I move the keyboard, I can enlarge this circle, and I can also move it around too. Down here it says Earth, -7, -6, -5. And it says, as I'm zooming out, we're seeing more of what may be the galaxy? I'm not quite sure what's happening, so I'm going to just quickly consult a manual or online guide to see what's meant to be happening here. Tomorrow we'll be jumping into the games of the 1970s, the first true home consoles. So check out tomorrow's video where we'll be looking at consoles such as the 1977 release Atari 2600. And there will be a lot of very famous games I'm sure you're familiar with there. I'm already very excited for tomorrow's video. We're going to make our way through all the decades this week up until the modern day 2020s. So I hope you enjoy this series I'm making over the next week. Please like the video and subscribe if you didn't already. If you'd like to buy your own Retroid Pocket 5, please check out the official Retroid link in the description, which is my affiliate link. So thank you very much to anyone who uses that. If you'd like to decide what kind of videos I make next week, then check out the channel memberships next to the subscribe button, and I'll see you again tomorrow for another episode in this series of going through all of the gaming decades on the Retroid Pocket 5. Thank you very much for watching, and see you tomorrow. Bye.